Good day to you. This is Anagalactic reading to you from the Book of Enoch, where we are now in the final 25 chapters, which may sound longer than it is. We won't be able to complete all 25 chapters in this reading. However, we've reached a most important section of the book, of which most scholars count 5. You could say 6, but there's one area where it's a little uncertain, the section divisions. Because this is the oldest book in the world, we already know that it is the oldest book of astronomy of all time, but it's also the oldest prophecy, and it also contains the more complete prophecies of Noah. Noah was a prophet, as the Islam people know. Muhammad confirmed that in the Quran. And now we're going to begin reading, because this book really, it does require some explanation at some places to make it more clear. But this book is quite simple, although there's quite a bit in it. So without further ado, we'll continue now with our reading, beginning in chapter 83 of the Ethiopic copy of Enoch, which is now known to be as close to the original as can be recovered. That was recovered 200 years ago and has been translated into English well over a half a dozen times. This is by far the most complete and best translation of all. And now, my son Methuselah, I will show you all the visions that I saw. This is Enoch speaking, and his son indeed is Methuselah, whose son is Lamech, whose son is Noah. So Noah, or Noach, or Nu, as the Islam people say it, all pretty much the same, is the great-grandson of Hanok, whom Islam people call Idris, which is a name derived from a title, Edris, basically meaning exactly what Enoch was in one sense, a scholar, a leader or a guide. He's called by much more exalted names than that, certainly by Muhammad. We all respect Enoch, the world's first prophet. If you include Adam, as the Islamic people do, you do have to qualify the nature of Adam's prophecy. He did not write it down. He did not need to, because Enoch, his seventh grandson, that is the seventh from Adam, which is stated in the New Testament and has been confirmed, as best as we can confirm anything, but there is corroboratory evidence showing that the lineage from Adam to Noah is indeed about 10 generations. Which is not very long, and that leaves some loopholes open as to how come there were so many people if there were only 10 generations. I have not yet come to that delicate question, because I want to defer delicate, controversial questions, potentially controversial, until we're done getting the actual messages of this book, which doesn't have much to do with that aspect of what we know about recorded history. And now, my son Methuselah, I will show you all the visions that I saw. Before you, I will recount them. 2 visions I saw before I took a wife, and the one was unlike the other. We presume he's referring to his visions there, not his former and later wife, although they may have been unlike the other too. That is, unlike the other as well. Boy, is English a strange language. This is written in an ancient language, which is the predecessor both of Hebrew and Arabic, and both languages are thought to contain, as I agree in both cases, nuances that don't come across in English that are actually somewhat critical to get the Sufi, and I use Sufi in a Catholic sense. Well, that's enough confusing you. 2 visions I saw before I took a wife, and the one was unlike the other. The first was when I was learning to write, and the second before I took your mother as my wife. I saw a terrible vision, and concerning it I made supplication to the Lord. I was lying down in the house of Mahalalel, my grandfather, when I saw in a vision heaven was thrown down and taken away, and it fell down upon the earth. And when it fell upon the earth, I saw how the earth was swallowed up in the great abyss, Mountains were suspended upon mountains, and hills sank down upon hills. Well, one can understand, I would have to confess, that Enoch's first vision certainly must have been disturbing from the brief way he recounts it here. Tall trees were cut from their roots and were thrown away and sank into the abyss. And then speech fell into my mouth, and I lifted up my voice to cry out and said, "The earth has been destroyed." And Mahalalel, my grandfather, aroused me, since I was lying near him, and said to me, "Why do you cry out so, my son? And why do you lament so?" And I recounted to him the whole vision that I had seen, and he said to me, "A terrible thing you have seen, my son, and mighty is the vision of your dream and the secrets of all the sin of the earth. It must sink into the abyss, and it will be utterly destroyed. And now, my son, arise and make supplication to the Lord of glory, since you are faithful, that a remnant may remain upon the earth, and that he may not obliterate the whole earth." My son, from heaven all this will take place on the earth, and on the earth there will be great destruction. Then I arose and prayed, and made supplication and request, and my prayer I wrote down for the generations of eternity, and everything I shall show you, my son Methuselah. And when I went out below and saw the heaven and the sun rising in the east, and the moon setting in the west, and a few stars, and all the earth and everything as he made it from the beginning, then I blessed the Lord of judgment, and to him I ascribed majesty, for he made the sun go forth from the windows of the east, so that it ascended and rose on the face of the heaven, and he made it rise, and it traverses the path that it was shown. And I lifted up my hands in righteousness, and blessed the great Holy One. And I spoke with the breath of my mouth, and with a tongue of flesh, which God has made for the sons of the flesh of man, that they might speak with it. And he has given them breath, and tongue, and mouth, that they might speak with it. Blessed are you, O Lord King, great and mighty in your majesty, Lord of all the creation of the heaven, King of kings, and God of all eternity. Your power and your reign and your majesty abide forever and forever and ever, and to all generations your dominion. All the heavens are your throne forever, and all the earth is your footstool forever and forever and ever. For you have made, and you rule all things, and nothing is too difficult for you. Wisdom does not escape you, and it does not turn away from your throne, from your presence. You know and see and hear all things, and there is nothing that is hidden from you. And now the angels of your heavens are doing wrong, and upon human flesh is your wrath, until the great day of judgment. And now, O God and Lord and great King, I make supplication and request that you fulfill my prayer, to leave me a remnant on the earth, and not obliterate all human flesh, and devastate the earth, that there be eternal destruction. And now, my Lord, remove from the earth the flesh that has aroused your wrath, but the righteous and true flesh raise up as a seed-bearing plant forever. And hide not your face from the prayer of your servant, O Lord. Enoch's second vision. And after this, I saw a second dream, and will show all of it to you, my son. And Enoch lifted up his voice and said to his son Methuselah, "To you I speak, my son. Hear my words and incline your ear to the dream vision of your father. Before I took your mother Edna as my wife, I saw in a vision on my bed, and look, a bull came forth from the earth and that bull was white. I am going to pause here and in fact turn this off for a moment to speak of what is being introduced here, because this is an extremely famous part of Enoch. It is an extended metaphor which actually has a name called a parable. A parable is a metaphor. It's an extended metaphor. Yeshua was famous for his parables, which again are metaphors. You use something such as animals in this case to represent something else that has nothing to do with the animals themselves, but they represent, in this case, governments. And governments, as you know from my most recent video presentations, are the subject of this prophecy, that the fallen angels, and in fact the giants, are metaphors. The fallen angels should, in my opinion, be taken metaphorically, even though that is much more reasonable on this side of reality, that angels are almost certainly real. But as for them fornicating with human women, that is scientifically impossible, and therefore neither Islam nor Sufi Christianity can accept that. And therefore Enoch was giving a parable. And the support for this uniformly consistent point of view comes from other prophecies, such as Daniel's, Johann the Revelator, and in fact, Yeshua himself, used exactly this metaphor to describe governments, which are the most exceedingly irrational entities known to humankind. It is fair to say that governments are responsible for 100% of all evil on earth. It comes from organizations of like-minded men. Why are these men so like-minded? Because when they do that, they become immoral. And their groups become immoral 100% of the time. And it was no less than Carl Gustav Jung, the very famous psychologist, who pointed out that any large group of like-minded men has a morality in inverse proportion to its size. Why would that be? Psychology cannot explain that, and therefore science is helpless before that phenomenon. But it's the most evil, destructive, horrific, life-ending perception that humans have. That governments must be destroyed. They must be destroyed. But whenever a government is destroyed, for instance, by an invasion or by a revolution, the two standard ways that governments come to an end, they're instantly replaced by something worse. And it's gotten worse and worse for thousands of years until now we have Israel, which I don't need to say anything about the horror that this nation actually exists now. And the United States, the greatest threat to this planet of all time is the United States. Germany, which is basically the largest country in Europe, or you could say it was, very nearly took over all of Europe, within an ace of taking out the Bolsheviks. And once the Germans were destroyed, the Bolsheviks took over half of Europe because Roosevelt just gave it to him. It wasn't Roosevelt. How do men come up with these crazy decisions? To just slice up Europe after the war, as was done after World War I? How do these things happen? The entire nation of Russia was turned into an open-air concentration camp. And now it's stated on all sides that that's exactly what Israel is. Scholars have attempted to draw connections between these enormous monsters, which are giants. Those are the giants, the result of supernatural fornication with male anima, to get men to act like bitches. They act like animals. It's because they've been fucked. That's actually the right word. Probably why it's a swear word, because it's referring to demonology, which is the only explanation at all for governments, is supernatural invasion. Well, that's exactly what Enoch is talking about. So this is called the parable of the animals. And the captions given by various translators are really magnificent in their attempt to characterize what they're reading. Because it doesn't take long before you realize what's being discussed in this super long parable, which is impossible to decipher unless you have the key. I have been told, and I've been through this in studying all the prophecies, including, of course, Revelation, where somebody has the key to the symbols. Well, if you have it, that's exactly what you need. But actually, the key is not provided. You would have to do research or have some insight, some direct insight into what these animals actually represent. In the case of Daniel's famous prophecy from out of Babylon, and I think you know the story, so I won't recount it, but Daniel had several prophetic visions, dreams, and prophecies, which are written down in the book of Daniel, and they're diverse, but the very first one, in fact, the first two of his prophecies, are purely parabolic. One is about a statue made of essentially 5 substances, starts out a head of gold, I believe shoulders of silver, a belly of bronze and legs of iron, and then the feet are clay and iron mixed. I have read dozens of explanations. All of them actually concur. That one, because that one's actually virtually explained. But it's a parable. It's not about a goddamned statue, for Christ's sake. And Daniel's last prophecy, which Yeshua told his followers to study and master, because it's critical, in Yeshua's opinion, that we understand Daniel's last vision. Well, you know who gave Daniel that vision that Yeshua approved of for study, specific study? That was Gabriel, the same angel that prophesied to Muhammad. And that's been proved, so you can get down off your little Protestant high horse, because it's time you sat down at the feet of Islam, you goddamned satanically controlled Protestant shit-eaters. You have to bow to Islam now. They're Christian, for Christ's sake. And if you say a word against those people, you're going to answer for it to heaven. Because the Book of Enoch is about Yeshua in context of Islam. What you don't realize yet is that religion is the purest form of science. It's absolutely logical. But there's one aspect of reality on earth that simply cannot be explained. It's impossible to explain governments. Governments came from Satan's ass. That's just same thing as saying the universe is expanding. Because you can say any fucking thing you want. Because it's so irrational, it doesn't matter what you say. You could say, along with Sir Roger Penrose, that the universe is simply changing scale. Well, perhaps or perhaps not, but you don't know the fuck what you're talking about. You're just guessing because there's no answer. You can't put yourself outside the universe in order to examine it as an object. So the same thing is true with governments on earth, the most horrific of which is the United States government, because it has such enormous power. Well, it's called a beast in Revelation. It's called a giant in Enoch. And there are parables after parables. This is about animals. Really beasts, except these are farm animals. And it's so extensive that finally it becomes tiresome after just about the first 1/5 or 1/4 of the reading. You just get sick and tired because you don't know what the hell these animals mean. And so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but what I am going to do is show you a synopsis of very good scholars. I myself have to rely on scholarship for this because I have no idea what Enoch is talking about. I'll read just a little bit until I'm sure that you'll see what I'm talking about. We'll just read, continuing from where I left off. And this is in chapter 85. We're now within 23 chapters of the end of the Book of Enoch, as it has been collocated by the Ethiopians, according to whatever collegation they inherited over 2,000 years ago. Before I took your mother Edna, now we read down to this part. I saw in a vision on my bed, a bull came forth from the earth, and that bull was white. Okay. And after it, a young heifer came forth, and with her 2 bull calves came forth. One of them was black, and one of them was red. I'll read a little bit more, but I think you see where this goes on for page after page after page after page. But it does make sense according to the expositors. So I'll just read a little bit more so you'll get tired of it, so you'll be willing to listen to the expositors, who apparently have pieced this together, and you and I will learn together, because this is the only part of Enoch that I have no idea what he's talking. I can't make heads nor tails out of it. It's like doing a crossword puzzle without the stops, where you just have a blank grid, and then you have the list of the definitions that you know how to do a crossword. Well, what if you don't have those black, they're called stops, on the grid? It makes a nice pattern, and my father used to do these every day, and he was a master at it. He may have been one of the greatest crossword puzzlers of all time, and my mother kept up with him. We 3 kids were absolutely dumbfounded by, our parents were obviously geniuses, but they didn't really show it to that extent in any other way. But it's obvious, my God, they can do these crosswords. Well, that's what it's like to figure this out, except my father could do the super advanced ones in the back of the New York Times compendia, which some of them looked like a phone book. He would do them all, but in the back were just blank grids with no numbering and no stops. You had to figure it out geometrically. He could do them. I consider that to be supernatural. I mean, I'm a little gullible that way, I guess, because I believe in heaven. Well, he was given a gift. If I can't understand it, the only word I have for it is gift. Well, that's impossible. No human can do those shitty things. Anyway, I guess you could tell I did not inherit my father's gift for crosswords. But I'll just read a little bit more here of this crossword puzzle with no stops, no numbers. There aren't even any definitions, except these cryptic, how do you and I know what Enoch was talking about 7,000 years ago?